teach journalism at Mount Lake Terrace High School, and I have the distinct honor and privilege of introducing our host and moderator for today. You know her. Teresa Whipple is a 40-year Edmonds resident and journalist who founded My Edmonds News back in 2009, and that was followed by the acquisition of MLT News in 2012 and Linwood Today in 2013. Of course, that all makes up the My Neighborhood News Network. In 2023, she did something very unique and original. The organization became a 501c3 nonprofit supported by donations from the community. She has been a true champion of South Snohomish County communities. And she's also a dear friend of mine and a huge advocate for the students in the journalism program where I teach at Mount Lake Terrace High School. It is my distinct honor and privilege to welcome to the microphone our host and moderator for today, Teresa Whipple.
Thank you, Vince. And indeed, journalism programs like his are what is going to keep us alive and this industry alive. And so he's been there for more than 30 years, and he deserves a round of applause today. I want to thank everybody for coming today. I also want to thank the League of Women Voters of Snohomish County for sponsoring this event. They have been, and the State League has been, a very strong supporter of our work to save journalism, to enhance journalism. And without their support, we wouldn't be as strong as we are today. So thanks to the League. And thanks to the Edmonds Theater for hosting us. There aren't very many communities that have a small, intimate, beautiful, historic, 100-plus-year-old theater, and we are so grateful to be here, so thank you. We scheduled this documentary intentionally in October. As Vince said, we were founded 16 years ago, and it was in October, so happy birthday to us. And after the film, we will bring to the front of the room an esteemed panel that includes local journalists who are working in the field as well as supporters of journalism. And we all share that same commitment to producing good, strong, trusted, emphasis on trusted community journalism. And that is something that we're proud to bring this film to you today because we believe it's so important. Also, just a shameless plug, we are using this as a fundraiser because we are a nonprofit, as Vince said. We aren't going to leave this on forever. It won't be annoying for the whole thing. But if you want to give, you can text 4 parts to 50155 or use that QR code. And I will say, we have a local donor who wanted to remain anonymous who gave us $5,000 to do a match, and we are almost there. We are $60 away from meeting that as of last night. So if anybody is so inclined, any amount will be matched, and this goes through the 31st of October, but please, if you're inclined, we'd appreciate that donation. So let's go on to the film. After that, we will have our panel. We welcome your questions, and thank you for being here. Manager of the Washington State University Murrow News Fellowship. She served on the board of the Online News Association for 10 years and is now the vice president of the Western Washington Society, her professional journalist chapter. Alex Bruel on the end there is a writer, photographer, and editor with a decade of experience as a daily and weekly newspaper journalist in Western Washington. He recently left his role as editor of the Vashon Maury Island Beachcomber to pursue a freelance career. Brenda Mann Harrison in the purple, president-elect of the League of Women Voters of Snohomish County. She's a member of the League of Women Voters of Washington Local News and Democracy Advocacy and Education Committee. Jaime Mendez on the far left is the co-founder of Se Habla Media. Mendez is a journalist who has worked on Spanish language news and information programs in the Seattle area for more than 2 decades. And he hosts the daily newscast at Jaime News, Mendez News, which you probably see on My Edmonds News every day because we republish it with English subtitles. And then Michael Whitney, who is the editor of the Snohomish County Tribune Center. He has reported on Snohomish, Monroe, and Everett issues with the Weekly Tribune newspaper, which is 125 years old, by the way. I found out amazing, and Michael's been there since 2008. So thanks to all of you for joining us, and thanks for watching that movie with us. I want to start with Brenda, have some questions, and we will take Q&A after we finish a conversation here. The League of Women Voters has been advocating for local news both in Washington State and nationally. Could you tell me why this is such an important issue for the League?
Thank you for the question, Teresa, and I think the movie answered that, and that is the local news is essential for democracy and informed voters. And the mission for the League of Women Voters is, well, empower voters and defend democracy. And you certainly can't do that unless you have trusted news and information that your local dedicated trained reporters provide. Local news is just absolutely essential if you want to keep the community informed, connected, and keep those in power held accountable for what they're doing. When newspapers started disappearing, the League of Women Voters of Washington State, there were a group of women who said, we want to take a look at this. And so they got together in 2021 and put together a 2-year study, and I have a copy of it, and this was no small feat. Look at how thick this is. They wanted to see what was happening in Washington and if it mimicked what was happening across the United States. And they found that when there was a news desert or when local news is diminished, voting rates decline, the number of people who run for elected office decline, government spending is up, and people just are not civically engaged. And because of this study, membership at the state level said, well, we want to approve a position that allows us to support and advocate for local news. And that position was also adopted by the National League. And because of that, the fact that both the state and national league says local news is essential, our local league, the League of Women Voters of Snohomish County, was able to sponsor this event. And we are able to advocate for support of local news at the state level. We have a group of individuals who are working to support Senate Bill 5400 last year. And, it was just this last legislative session, and we're hoping to do that again this year to get more prepared for this fall, or the coming year. Excuse me, got my dates mixed up there. And we are also working on a series of workshops that are focused on media and news literacy, and it's all because we value local news and its impact. And without it, our democracy is in danger.
Thank you. And you really have made a big difference. I've been working with the League for a couple of years now, and the work is just invaluable because it's a third-party voice that isn't just from us in the industry, but somebody who is saying, look, this really matters. So thank you for that. Michael, as I mentioned, working for a publication that has such a storied history, and you've been there for 17 years, which I joked you must have been about 12 when you started. But what is the secret of your paper's success amid these turbulent times? Because, we've just seen how many newspapers are closing, and yet the Tribune has lasted. What is the secret?
There's two ways to answer the question, both from a business sense and also from a community news sense. The business sense we just heard about Alden Capital and its other ilk that are going in and doing what it is doing. With the Tribune, our history has been that we've been in Snohomish for 130 years. We have had a owner that bought us in 2021 that is a believer in community newspapers. That's a key thing to that part. The previous owner is a believer in community newspapers, but that was the 1980s, 1990s, 2000s. Things were a little different and a little bit better for newspapers at that point in time. That business sense is part of why the success of our sustainability for that. But another aspect sustainably is that we are a vertically integrated newspaper. And the context of that is that We are a subsidiary of a commercial print operation, Pacific Publishing Company. We have our own print, we have our own successful commercial print, and the Tribune itself is actually working very successfully, but we're vertically integrated. So the headcount and costs, because of the circumstances, changed. But the secret to success, you don't just put out a newspaper and hope for the best. You also have to be responsible to the community. That's the other aspect or the other vector of the secret to the success. And the reason why I say that is because we both have to be responsible to the community. We also have to keep watch of the community. From where I'm in an office in Snohomish, it's that we are basically the hometown newspaper, print newspaper for Snohomish. We cover Snohomish, Monroe, and Everett. We absorbed a news desert in Monroe in the context. We had always been in Monroe, but we absorbed a news desert for that. We're looking at Sultan a little bit. We're looking at Lake Stevens a little bit. That central area is where we are, but we also are the only ones necessarily monitoring what's happening or what's going on at city council, what's going on in our local government, what's going on for things that you hear about on social media or there's conversations of. Some conversation is happening about this, that, or the other. Our role is to clarify and provide neutral, informative reporting. Without that, it'd just be Facebook perhaps. I'm sorry to say. And so that may be the secret of the success and why people need us and read us and advertise with us.
Thank you for that. And I will say, piggybacking on that, I agree with everything you said. The other thing that I think you would agree, I hope, is that we are there when the community needs us and they trust us because they see us places. They see a face. I joke that we have reporters who just walk down the street and people know who they are and they see that we care about the communities and it matters. And I think that's what local news can bring. Thank you, Michael. Jaime, you've worked on Spanish language news programs for more than 20 years. Could you talk about the important role that ethnic media play in the U.S. and your ideas for ensuring those outlets not only survive but thrive, because certainly there are more of them than there have ever been that I've seen, and kudos to you for keeping it alive. I'd like you to talk more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation, and thank all of you for being here, because that means you care. And it's important that we still care. Wasn't that a great documentary? It was great production. When I went to school, I wanted to do documentaries, that kind of documentaries. It's very, very hard work. I don't think I've seen so many vultures in my life. I want to have nightmares with those animals. What was the question? The question was about ethnic media. I don't know if you know this, but about 1/3 of the population of the state of Washington identifies themselves as ethnic, from an ethnic group. Do you think there is 30% of representation in the media? No. I don't know what the percentage is, but I'm pretty sure that it's even less than that. It is important because you need to provide proper information for your community. You need to be culturally sensitive, reliable, and you cannot improvise that. So it is important to have people that actually are part of the community are the ones who are informing the community. Add to that culturally sensitive language barriers. So there are a lot of people in this state that speak other languages other than English, and they like to get their information in their language, and that is very tough. And for us, doing Spanish news, we're not enough. We're just one of just a handful of media outlets that do Spanish news. Not even in a daily basis. We do it on a daily basis, but most of them don't do it on a daily basis. A lot of them are not well trained. And the second part, so we need more. The second part is the survival. The good thing about what we're doing purely, almost exclusively social media, is that it was easy to do. It was easy to start. It was cheap. We pretty much, in a matter of 3 months, put together a newscast. We had the advantage of starting with about 100,000 followers already from my career as a journalist. Now we doubled that number. and going up really fast. So it's easy to form it, but the bad part is that it's easy to do it too, because it's a double-edged sword. Anybody can do it, and that leads to also just anyone misinforming people, whether on purpose or unintentionally. So because it's cheaper to do it, and a lot of people now are watching their news either social media or in digital form. This is also a Reuters, I think it's Reuters Institute that said that this year was the first year that more than 50% of the people in the United States were getting their news in digital form. Now for Hispanic speakers, 87% of Spanish speakers actually get their information in digital form and social media. So the future of it's already happening. And our example is that we are still very new news outlet in the form of social media, but we're sustainable. And so I'm optimistic that this could thrive. And the only thing is that we need more people to do it.
Thank you very much for that. Alex, you represent a younger generation of journalists who face a shrinking pool of journalism jobs, as we noted here in this movie. You recently decided to leave regular employment for freelance work. What do you think the future holds for new journalists?
Yeah, I guess I want to give a little bit of context on what I left and sort of the folks I've worked with. So I left the Beachcomber, which our kind of ultimate owner is Carpenter Media Group, which has been on a buying spree through Washington and a lot of Oregon as well. Everyone that I've worked with in local news and newsrooms has been wonderful. That includes papers I've worked with under Sun Publishing and Carpenter. So I have nothing but respect for those people. But there have been two incidents, and I swear I'm getting to the point. But people here might be familiar with the cuts at the Everett Herald. They gutted a little over half of the news staff. The members of that newspaper wrote an article about that. Carpenter didn't like it. They took it down unilaterally. The members of the paper had to negotiate and work with them to get it back up. Just a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, up in Alaska, there was an article at another Carpenter-owned paper reporting on a vigil or memorial for the murder of Charlie Kirk. Again, in that case, there was a state legislator who did not like the way the article was written, complained to Carpenter. Carpenter took the piece down, edited it, put it back up without consulting the staff. Now, in either case, can you sort of have a legitimate criticism of what was written? Sure, but my takeaway from it was, I don't really like this way of doing journalism where the owners can sort of swoop in and kind of tighten things up the way they want and not really do that collaboratively with the staff. So my time at a Carpenter paper in the last 2 years, I was working with two young intern freelancers, really talented, and with both of them saying, I'd really love to get you a job in this industry, but you have a front row seat, as I do, to what you're up against. And so a few things that are really productive for them, hyper-local, nonprofit news, local news blogs run by really talented journalists who've gotten out of the industry and who are kind of doing their own thing. There are still some traditional news operations that are really good too, but I think young journalists now, and myself included, you're really there isn't a traditional path into the industry anymore. You're looking for, where can I be happy? Where can I survive and do this work and have it feel meaningful and not feel like I'm sort of having my face kind of stuck to the grindstone all day. So if you can find that, it's fantastic and it's really meaningful. It's still possible. I think it's just getting harder.
Thank you for that. As I say to most college interns that come to work for us, are you sure this is where you want to be? And with that entree, Jody, I just want to say, first of all, for disclosure, we were very, very fortunate to get a Murrow News Fellow last year. She's starting her second year with us, Angelica, and the program has been just an amazing experience for us, so thank you for that. But my question is, you do direct this Murrow Fellowship Program, which is a state-funded program that places early career journalists in newsrooms across Washington, and there's also a similar program in California, also funded by the state. Is state funding of journalism one answer to the issue of shrinking news organizations?
Yes, as Steve Waldman indicated in the film, it's one of the policy solutions, but I wanted to ask a little survey here. Could the people who have had a bit of a career in the journalism field raise your hand, who's in the audience? Okay, the people I really care about is those who don't have your hands up. Because the energy in the industry is moving toward helping the community members understand, just as this movie indicated, the importance of news coverage in every community. So that's the impetus behind our program, in which we have placed 16 reporters serving 22 news organizations, one of them my neighborhood news network. The editor from the Port Townsend Leader, who's here, Meredith, has a reporter, as does Penny Rosenberg, who has a shared reporter between the Vancouver Columbian and the Long Daily News. So what I have are, 4 of the reporters who work for nonprofits, 3 for weeklies, 3 radio reporters, 1 who is shared with the TV station, and 2 of whom are shared with another newspaper. And then we have 7 reporters working for the institution formerly known as a daily, and 1 who's a TV reporter. So if we were to reopen applications again, we're state funded, totally. Our fellows earn a 2-year appointment at $55,000 each, regardless of where they live, and with state benefits. Hence, we had about 120 applicants, just like Alex is saying, a jump in salary, and a job in general. Some news organizations in the state wouldn't ask for a fellow to join the application process because it would have been disruptive to the newsrooms, because the general salary was about 30 grand. So it would almost be double of what a journalist with 30 years in the field would get. It creates some problems. And so I'd like to share, I've gotten over too long. Okay.
Go.
I have a very interesting story that kind of goes into all that, goes into what, well, Michael underestimates his importance in the community, by the way, it shows. So this week, I don't know if on your way east you pass through Sunnyside, Washington. It has a weekly, and we have a fellow in Yakima and 1 in Tri-Cities. And the Franklin County former executive left under squirrely circumstances to take a job in Sunnyside. And the Yakima paper, our fellow, covers Sunnyside, which is a 30-mile drive from Yakima, but they try to cover the lower Yakima Valley because there's no reporters there. It's a huge swath of terrain, and I don't think our fellow, I don't think that area would be covered, except for what the Sunnyside did on their Facebook post recently was prep scores, Red Ribbon Week, and a pumpkin palooza. But nevertheless, Queston has been religiously covering the Sunnyside City Council because this man who's covered came in from the other Franklin County, had other circumstances. So he's now on leave. They have a new temporary city council member who's earning $460, or a city manager earning $463 a day. What happened was Queston covered the first story, Larissa covered the second story, and the Sunnyside newspaper used both of their stories because all of our work is available through Creative Commons, which means anybody can use it as long as you give credit. So in my opinion, what needs to happen is all media organizations have to somehow figure out a way to make sure that our mission is simple, to inform communities. Big issue on the side, of course, is how to fund that. But nevertheless, what I think is that example is that through collaboration, 3 communities got the kind of news out of a news desert that they couldn't have without our program in place. So I would like to hope that our legislature in the next shortened session could renew our program, but because we're kind of doubtful, our state has a huge financial burden, so it's more likely that our efforts to raise money like everyone else and become more of a nonprofit standing like Report for America is in our future.
Thank you very much for that. So I would like any of you who want to respond to answer this question, but watching this documentary, what was your first thought when the movie ended? What was the first takeaway in your head? Anybody want to answer that?
Thank goodness for Julie Reynolds.
Yeah, okay.
With what it is for what she was able to pull up, and she's talking about private companies, and that's the key thing about the ways that you can find out these. The tricks of the trade that she's using are things that everyday people are not going to easily be able to do, let alone think to do. And secondly, to be able to find that information and reveal it can be translated to any basic private company, depending on the size of that company. But with what it is, that was an important milestone for letting the public know this is a company that is doing this. They're not interested in being in the news business. They're interested in being in the business that they are. And news just happens to be the nice conduit for it, which is to get money out of it. Thank you. That was my first reaction.
Great. Anybody else want to share?
My first reaction was anger. How can they do that to people and not have a heart? And but you know, in the documentary, they're very clear about, you know, they're there to make money. That's for them. That's the right thing to do. It's for themselves, not for the people, and it's not going to change. And when they said capitalism is broken, it's been broken for a long time. The news industry is just one of those that are stripped for parts. On the other hand, I go back to the digital and social media way to do news. They can't strip for parts because there are no parts to be stripped. Come for us, it's just me and my wife, and we're inseparable. So good luck with that. So I see. I mean, again, I'm optimistic about you know, there are different ways to handle that, and it is unavoidable that people are looking at the information. The primarily source of information is either social media or some form of digital news. So I don't know if these hedge funds will find a way to also go and hit that. If there's no money in it, then they'll stay away from us.
Yeah, and does anybody else have a response to that first question? Because I have a follow-up question for you on that when we're done. Okay. And it isn't just for you, it's for everybody. So when I think about this movie and other things I've been thinking about related to journalism and ensuring its survival, the thing that I wonder about is, what if we continue on the road of thinking we can fund journalism through advertising, which is the way we've always traditionally funded it, and yet nobody is going to a website or reading a newspaper anymore. You know, when you look at the younger generation of folks who are getting their news, everybody I know, it's whatever shows up on their TikTok or in their social media feed. And my question is, if any of you have thought about this, how do we look at news differently and the delivery of news differently to meet people where they are? And what does that mean for how we fund it?
My dad is 87 years old, and he still to this day loves to get that black ink from the newspaper every morning. I think he's been reading this newspaper since he was 1. He's an avid reader. Those things are changing. Now I can see him actually sharing some news that he gets on digital, and I'm like, wow, he's actually getting to it. So again, it's unavoidable. It's going to go there. If you do a good job, then you're going to get your clients coming, because you know we are for profit. So we are right now considered the only hardcore news Monday to Friday that is audiovisual, that is TV-like. We kept that on purpose to do it like, you know, I was 17 years I was working for Univision Seattle, that they closed the channel, just like that. Sinclair Broadcasting closed the channel in Seattle. That was the only local newscast. Then a year later they did exactly the same thing with the Portland, Univision Portland. They also closed it, even though it was good business, both. And So we became the only ones doing this. So, obviously, if you want to get your message to the population, Spanish-speaking population, then they will come to us. There are other news outlets that do Spanish, but again, they're not as content, they're not daily, some of them are not that big, and so in our case, I just can talk about our situation. We have the audience, and as long as we have the audience, and they trust us, and we actually deliver a good product, they will be very loyal. And the advertisers will come, not just advertisers like businesses, but also government and nonprofits that want to get their message across, and also through grants. I see that as our future.
I think one of the things I'd like to point out about funding sources, whether it comes from people in the community that are banding together to form a nonprofit, or through the government, public funds. The League of Women Voters has made it really clear in its position that regardless of the funding source, that the control of the content remains in the hands of the publication. That they should not, the funding source should not have an influence over that content, and that is really critical. And the legislation that the League of Women Voters at the state level has been advocating for or supporting would be through a tax that would be on industries, the high-tech industries that really do reap a profit off of the news that they publish without supporting the generation of that content.
Anybody else want to weigh in on that thinking? Jody? Yeah?
We need you a whole nother afternoon.
Okay. All right. Anybody else have any other thoughts on the movie or anything else they'd like to share? I do want to allow some time for Q&A from the audience. I don't want to cut you off. Yes.
I guess what I was left thinking was some more recent challenges that we're facing and the ramifications therein, which is, I don't know if you know this, but just a few weeks ago, the Hearst board stood up to Alden to protect the Dallas Morning News. So again, Julie's efforts to make people know that this is out there, but boy, there's some other challenges that, again, a whole nother afternoon, but I guess we welcome your questions now.
Okay, let's do it. So does anybody have a question? I'll run the microphone to anybody who has a question.
I thought it was a great documentary and just amazing, but I think there's a lot of subtleties here that are confusing because recently moved to Seattle from California, and I was looking at the masthead of the San Jose Mercury, which is owned by Alden, but yet they have still 80 reporters, and a lot of the Gannett newspapers, and I know now they're owned by Gatehouse, like at 20 reporters. The Stockton paper is California's a ghost paper with 3 reporters. So, and for all Alden's evil, so-called evil, they have quite large staff at relatively compared to Gannett and some other companies like Lee Enterprises. So I'm just kind of, I think it's confusing because there's a lot of subtlety, going on.
I have to push back on that as an Alden employee for 7 years. Want to give me the microphone? I'm no longer with Alden, but I was with Alden for 7 years, and I have, it is bad. I left them in 2021, not on a buyout, but came to the Pacific Northwest, and just got together with a friend, flew into Portland for his trip to Powell's, because every 3 years I'll meet you there. And they have in the Los Angeles area about 1 reporter for every 1 million people. So the math doesn't add up. You just can't. And if you look at I doubt that there are, I seriously doubt that there are 80 reporters left at the Saturday Mercury News. It's just not how it's staffed. And when you look at the Bay Area, when you look at Southern California, and even in Washington, there's just a million small towns, and each one of them has a government. So if you have one reporter and they're trying to cover 50 cities, it's just not physically possible. They only have 40 hours in a week. So it's just, it is bleak. And I would say that that documentary was optimistic. Way more optimistic than I would be now as a professional. I am an editor at the Enterprises. I'm just president of the SPJ Oregon Pro Chapter. So I have a lot of years into this, and it's really hard to be optimistic. And I was just like, Lizzie, like, isn't she the one that was the eternal optimist? But there are a lot of changes that have happened since that documentary. And you know that by looking at the NPR logo and the PBS logo. So, and if you have any questions about Alden, I'm happy, since I'm no longer employed by them, I'm happy to answer them.
As we come to the moment, I wanted to point out some statistics that, Alden's one issue and the vultures, but recently, about 3 weeks ago, was a study out from Rebuild Local News and LUFRAC, which indicated that in the year 2002, the average community, or 100,000 per capita, 100,000 Americans had 40 journalists covering them, down to 8 nationwide, down to 7 in Washington.
Yeah, I was going to add a little bit of context. When you think of a newspaper, when you think of a newsroom, when you think of who's in there, it is something where the staff of a location may not all be all frontline journalists. And the reason I say that is because you might have some reporters, you'll have editors, you might be lucky to have copy editors, then you have managerial staff as well. And if you have others, you have a lot more working in the operations that wouldn't be necessarily professional reporters working with everything else.
I have a thing. So I like to think of myself as a fairly well-informed citizen. I mean, I subscribe to Eyewitness News, Everett Herald, and the Seattle Times, New York Times, Washington Post. Yes, I actually do read a lot of it. And yet, this was all a complete revelation to me. I didn't know about this, and I want to know what else can I do other than subscribing to all these papers. What else can I as a citizen do?
Subscribe to High Memory District.
I will.
There are 3 things to make sure to watch out for that I would say in terms of the print aspect. Anyone else can answer this too. On the print aspect, there are 3 risks for this. 1, a large amount of funding for print is within the legal notices in the back of the paper. If there's a change in the legislature that says that is no longer necessary to be printed in your local publication because it can be received online or somewhere like that, that would have a funding gap that would damage a lot of things. That's probably one of the biggest reasons, or what I would say to watch out for. You can always talk with your legislators, talk to people to see about what options there would be on supporting news. And also, if you see a reason to advertise or bring your funding directly, or have friends who can, that's the bread and butter of how, in the for-profit model at least, media outlets survive. And in the non-profit model, of course, flip out your fault.
If I could add too, as a former newspaper publisher, talking about display advertising from this standpoint.
We want you on the mic.
Okay, even though my voice carries 5 miles.
Good voice. Thank you. As a former newspaper publisher, and it's been a while, but from a display advertising standpoint, it's to solicit those advertisers, to visit those advertisers, to make sure that the advertisers themselves in the for-profit model feel that they're getting a return for advertising beyond supporting the community, which most of them do in a local newspaper.
They want to be part of it to support the local paper, but they also like to bring in customers. So that's, yet another one. That's speaking as a former publisher, that piece of it helps. We used to joke. There was a point too where I also did work for the sadly demised Seattle Weekly for a long time, and we actually had a regular softball game between the editorial staff and the business staff, and we called it the purists versus the peddlers. But we all got along so well, and it was a very family environment, and it was the alternative press. But it was a big deal to make sure that we also did recognize that who did support us in the community from an advertiser standpoint. So, classifieds were a part of it, legal notices, huge part of it, but the display part. And that's sadly what has been a large demise, is watching display advertising go down. So, anyway. I'm very encouraged by the other alternatives we're talking about here, whether it's a nonprofit standpoint. I think the important thing is that we just kind of keep swinging at these things to see what really does work. So.
May I add just one quick thing? The one thing that I think is really essential that doesn't relate to money in terms of helping local news survive, and that is be kind to your local journalist. I mean, my goodness, send them an email, tell them thank you. Tell them that the story that they wrote made a difference. Tell others in your community, because if people aren't aware of this, tell them about the impact that reporting has on your life. Or tell them, did you know about this? Won't that inform how you vote because you know about this? Share what you read in your local news with others. It's essential. And if you have a news tip, reach out to them. They might not get to it because they're so overworked, but at least let them be aware. What broke my heart about the film was the impact on those people who care so much about what they do and how important it is, and that they could no longer do it. And that just broke my heart.
I'll just quickly add something to that. To have feedback from viewers, listeners, readers, it is important. It's good to hear. I like the work that you're doing. This makes a difference, but it to me is important. I think every journalist is important to hear also when they say, well, I don't agree with you. That means you care. That means you read it. That means it hit a nerve, and that is important. I get a lot of comments from, good or bad. But one of my favorites was a person who, I did a story about, I think the Mexican consulate or something like that, and I defended the Mexican consulate, which a lot of people were attacking, and somebody wrote, well, you are the worst Mexican I've met. I'm from Colombia.
Let's get to questions. Please raise hands. Yeah, there we go.
Hi, what a great panel, what a great movie. My question actually has to do with the nonprofit versus profit model. I want to comment too, which is it's all interconnected. We saw circulation increase 26.5% year over year at our small paper, which actually Friday was my last day there. And it's all connected. Make a better paper, more people want to read it, And then as sales.
There we go.
Make a better paper, more people want to read it, more people need to read it, and that's traditional journalism, covering the government, attending the school board, or listening to them online anymore. And you need staff and funding. Journalism costs money. So, I think that if it comes down to the profit, nonprofit, I really wonder about that in terms of the future. That's where it's sort of, if you have whatever Randy was saying about the number of reporters they still carry, it's better than having zero. But if there were once, I think the documentary said 8 papers and it took them to 2, you know what I mean? That's not the same thing. So that was my question for the panel.
Well, I'm going to take a stab at some of that. So it is an issue. We have a very small staff. In fact, Nick Ng, who's sitting in the front row there taking pictures, who's our managing editor, he said to me one day, so if you had all the money in the world, what would you do? And I had a long list. And of course, we do the best we can, but it is really tough. It is not comparable to what newspapers used to be able to do when they had a fair number of reporters and a fair number of editors and a fair number of proofreaders, and some of the larger papers do have that. And ideally, with a nonprofit model, the argument is we are asking the community to fund what their news source is by making it's a tax status. We're still, fortunately, we can still take advertising. That is not against the rules. So, and we have many lovely advertising sponsors. Please go out and support them. They're all around downtown Edmonds. But we value the fact that we are now able to give folks who itemize the ability to take a tax break or to give us money from their, IRA if they've got a minimum distribution or whatever. And that's what it does for us. It just gives us more options. It also gives us the ability to get grants, which we would not have been able to do before because we have that tax status. I don't think there's a magic bullet. I don't think there is one answer, and I think every community is different. Michael's community loves their newspaper. It's a for-profit, mostly print. You do have a website, yes. Mostly print, newspaper, and that works for them. In Edmonds, we have a newspaper and we have an online source. There's lots of different ways, but I think that the truth is the community is willing to support it. We don't have a paywall. Everybody can read our stories. We have Creative Commons. Jody referred to that. Everything we write is available to anybody for free if they want to reproduce it as long as they credit us. And that goes back to that cooperative, collaborative model that Jody was talking about. That's actually what they've been doing in Colorado. They alluded to some of that in the movie. In New Jersey, they have a cooperative. There's other places that are doing more of that. And frankly, I think Washington needs to look more strongly at that too, because the truth is, I frankly will see, I don't think anybody from the Edmonds Beacon is in the room, but I think it's ridiculous that there are two of us who are doing the same thing every day and every week.
Yep.
It's a waste of resources, a waste of money, and it's frankly silly. But that's a story for another day. So let's get to another question.
I guess a couple of questions. One is, have you submitted this to the Seattle International Film Festival documentaries? Have you done that?
I can just say I know they have
Did you
submitted
know-
it
do you know
to,
about
it's
it?
won some, I think it's been finalist for some awards.
Do you know that you can do that?
Yeah, it's not our movie, it's Rick Goldsmith's movie, but they have been submitting it to those places, yeah.
Okay. And then the other thing, I was wondering about, I think it's called the Washington Standard that I subscribe to. And I know that it is in every state. And so I have been telling my friends what a great newspaper it is. I mean, I really, I only read, I subscribe to the Seattle Times and the Everett Herald, and I get those in print, but I get everything else in digitally. And so I appreciate the reporting, especially Jerry Cornfield in the Washington Standard, and he goes to the state legislature, he really explains what's going on, and I appreciate that. And also, I'm sorry, I can't remember who you are exactly and when you seem to have acquired the 3 newspapers, but the reporting in those has really gone from kind of more editorial to actually news-based. And I appreciate that. It feels like it's more balanced. It's not, I don't know, I read all of these, and that's just what it seems like. And I have written back, but then somebody said, well, do you want to just publish the letter as it is? And I said, no, and because I have very critical things to say, and but then I didn't go ahead and rewrite it. I also noticed like the Edmonds, either it's the Edmonds Today or Edmonds, whatever it is, that there's a lot of controversy back and forth about the proposition, whatever it is, about real estate tax, and I love that. I think it's great.
Yes. Well, I'm just going to say I'm really looking forward to November 5th. to your point about the Washington State Standard, that is another Creative Commons, and that is free, and we are able to reproduce those stories. So maybe we have time for one more question.
But I just wanted to know, what's wrong with the Linwood today? I mean, why isn't there any, why isn't there any controversy about that? And I've written, and I never see my comment published. So I don't
You and
know.
I need to talk. Let's talk after this.
All right.
Okay. Yeah. Diane. Pick, I don't care. Pick anybody.
Really high.
In the back. Everybody says in the back.
Hi, I'm Deborah Binder, and I'm the food writer for my Edmonds News, or my neighborhood news. And I just wanted to comment and acknowledge you, Teresa, for being the creative person you are. And one of the things that really struck me, I've only lived in the Seattle area since 2001, having moved from the East Coast. And I slowly saw how the Seattle Times was not covering Snohomish County anymore and really missing that. And I feel like you're filling a void of getting out news for our community as well as other ones up north. But I think it's important to acknowledge you and that you bring a perspective to our community that's really important. So thank you.
Thank you. I think we need to get one more question because that was really a compliment, which I appreciate. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'd also like to acknowledge and just say how grateful many of us are to have the news that we do and to not be part of that desert for everybody who is sitting up there. So thank you all. It was interesting to me watching that movie and seeing that shift as things went online. And the comment that was made, it costs money to generate news and to have talented people and people who are experts in their fields generate that news. And then with that shift online, and now as we look at AI, it makes me wonder, is that even accelerate things more? So which kind of goes back to, I guess, what the funding model is. So I just wanted to see if there's any thought on what the impact of that is.
I think it was about time somebody mentioned the AI point. Double-edged sword, as you know, for many reasons. But I have to say that people who are doing this, we are very passionate about what we do, and we're very jealous about the product. And even though it may take us a little bit longer to do some things, at least it is our voice, and it is our creative input in what the news are. So AI, yes, it could be helpful, but when used in a responsible way.
I just want to clarify too, kind of the intent of my question. I think AI depends on all of this news that's being generated. It's just not paying for it. It is kind of my thought.
And that's much of what the legislation is built to do.
And one of the fallacies of AI also is that unless somebody has produced that news to feed it, it doesn't know what it's talking about, and it fabricates things. So we can't rely on that as any useful copy at all.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so this wasn't at my newspaper, but a good friend and colleague of mine is dealing with a Kafka-esque, or was dealing with a Kafka-esque situation about a month ago at his paper, where there was this clearly AI-generated text going around claiming that this bridge that had been out of commission for 2 months was suddenly about to reopen. And he clearly didn't write it. Again, it had all the hallmarks of being written by AI, and people were attributing it to his newspaper and saying, oh, well, they reported this is happening. And it's like, no, read the newspaper. This is some stuff that's coming up, but it's the way that it's written, it's clear that it is approximating phrasing and quotes from his own article. So it's like if this doppelganger came in and, you know, looked like you and talked like you and was taking your place, and yet it's saying things that aren't true. And so, you know, he should be spending his time writing the news. He should not be spending his time, or shouldn't have to be spending his time batting away misinformation that is being unintentionally attributed to his paper. So that was very frustrating to see. And I think, like people have said, AI is a tool, it's technology, it can be used for good. That's an example of it being used for very, very bad purposes.
Just 30 seconds. With technology increasing every day, it is more important than ever for people to be discerning and savvy consumers of news and information. And that's why the League of Women Voters is preparing a series of workshops currently for our League members on media and news literacy. It's essential that you are a critical thinker, that you know how to analyze what you see, to know if it's true, if it's false, is it misleading, is it something else? So it's essential that you arm yourself with those skills. Libraries are providing information about that. There are other sources, and the League, again, at the state level, hopes to provide workshops that our members can take out to communities about media and news literacy, because it is an essential skill.
We have to be out of here because there's another movie. Thank you all for attending the premiere. Appreciate it. Before we go on the news, everybody.